Hello Paradise Bags and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be working on the Upgrader by Chris W. Designs. This is a fantastic classy bag. I was in a little bit of a sewing rut and this really brought me right back out of it. In fact, so much so that I've made 2 of them so far and then a third one with you today. So this is the first one that I made. I did a little bit of a different strap on her. I didn't quite have enough of the floral print to do the full length of the strap that the pattern called for. So I just cut it in half and gave it a nice little strap accent there. Beautiful blue colors with floral print, perfect for spring, with some rose gold hardware. One thing that I love about this bag is that there is no top zipper at all. We do have a zipper pocket, but no top zipper on this. And instead, you just have this nice, convenient fold over closure. Nice big opening. I love this opening on this bag. It's nice and big. You can see right down in there with ease. It does have a zipper pocket on the inside. One of the features is on the outside you have these 2 smaller slip pockets on either side. So nice and big, and they do go deep down the body of the bag. Absolutely gorgeous. This is the small size. This is the large size. And you can see there is a little bit of a difference between the two, between the large and the small. It's not much, it's subtle, but it's just enough. I absolutely love this. She came out fantastic. I know that we're going to have a lot of fun making her today. So with that being said, let's get started. Okay, so I've grabbed my drink, I've got my snacks, I'm ready to go. First thing we're going to work on is the top part of our strap, as well as the bottom snap closure and the top snap closure. For now, you can move your straps out of the way. Our top and bottom strap snap closure, we're going to do a little bit different. She has you cut off 1.5 inches at one end. It doesn't matter, just 1.5 inches off of one of these, so that the fold is to the back. You can do that by all means. I just chose not to. I hate wasting, and once I read further into the pattern that you were going to have to cut off 1.5 inches, I decided I didn't want to do that. So grab your ruler and some type of marking tool, and we're going to mark down 1.5 inches on all of our pieces. So the bottom closure and the top closure, as well as your straps, and then you should have a line right down it that looks just like this. We're going to add double-sided sticky tape to either side of that. Double-sided sticky tape to either side of that. It doesn't matter which type of double-sided sticky tape you want to use. It's totally up to you. I do like to use tape that's going to be kept out of my seam allowance, or tape that's not going to gum up my needle. Even though I have a juki, sometimes that'll still happen. So I'm going to add double-sided sticky tape on both sides of that line. I'm going to do that to the other part of my top closure and then the other part of my bottom closure, as well as both of my straps. So we'll do that and we'll come back. Okay, so I have all of my pieces marked with my center line right down the center, so it'd be 1 inch from either side. I did that to my straps as well. You'll want to go ahead and pull out your lobster clasp and your D-ring. Now in the pattern, she has you measure so far down and stitch in between that area. That's only if you want to see stitching all the way around, because when we add it to this, if you don't do that stitching, then there's not going to be any stitching that's going to go around your lobster claw. I don't really care if they're stitching there or not. I suppose it makes it look a little bit nicer, a little bit neater. That's totally up to you, though. You can also do just some faux stitching right down the center if you would like. Personally, for me, I don't think that it really matters whether you have that stitching there or not. But if you do want that stitching, then you'll just want to refer to the pattern for how far down to measure and mark to do that faux stitching after we fold these. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to add our double-sided sticky tape down either side of the line that we just marked on one side and then on the other. Pretty standard for most strap application out there. So just like this. And then we're going to hold off. You don't want to, about 2 fingers length from the end, from either end. Just take the tape off right in between there, and we're going to fold this right to the center for our top snap closure, or she's calling it top closure strap, excuse me. So I just leave about 2 fingers length on either end, but then we'll take the tape off in between. Okay, so I've got my 3 pieces here folded with my centers folded in and clipped. This is the bottom closure strap, which is the piece that's going to have the D-ring attached to it. Okay, and then you should also have something that looks just like this for your top closure, and we've left these ends open so that we can sew across here with our top piece. So we have a double-sided, and you don't have to do a double-sided, you can do just one side. So if you wanted to cut one piece that was twice this length, you could do that too. So I've left my tape on there so you can see that, the backing of it, so that we can then attach our 2 pieces together. Let me clip this in place so that you can see. So just like that. So we've got the front, or the back side and the front side clipped together, and we're going to sew across here at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Now, if you want, after you do that, you'll press your seams open. If you want to do top stitching, now you can. You would just want to make sure that you can sew back over your top stitching at a later time. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to sew across here at 3/8 inch seam allowance and press my seam open and then leave it unstitched or untop stitched for now. On your other piece, your bottom strap closure, you can, again, if you want to do that top stitching now, you can, but you would want to make sure that you can then go over that top stitching again when we attach this to the back. So again, I'm not going to do that pre-top stitching. I'm just going to do the top stitching when we get ready to attach it to the bag. So set your bottom strap closure to the side for right now, along with your hardware, and let's sew this at 3/8 inch seam allowance. And but don't sew your other side just yet. Sew just this first side for now. Okay, so I've now sewn my 2 pieces together at that 3/8 inch seam allowance. So we're going to want to pull our seams apart just like this. And then you can go ahead and take your tape off from either side from here. And then if you wish to do some type of decorative top stitching across, you can do that as well. I'm not going to do that top stitching. Again, it's just preferential. So go ahead and remove our tape. Go ahead and lay that inside down. Now I like to take and trim off these corners just to kind of reduce the bulk there a little bit. So just like this. It'll help with folding when we go to fold to the center as well. Okay, so same thing, kind of fold that down to the center, trim those corners off just to reduce that bulk. So just like this. And so now we're going to, you can add some additional tape across here if you would like. I'm just going to fold mine in and use a clip to hold it there. I do always take my seam presser and give that a good roll. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Line it right up at the center. And I'll just use a clip to hold it for now. Okay, now before we go on to sewing our other side to make our loop, we need to attach our lobster claw. So we're just going to slip him on, or her. Just get it out of the way. And you can go as far down as you want. I'm just going to go about there. Just so it's enough out of the way so that when we go to sew this, it's not going to get in the way. So just like we did before, we're going to open this up a little bit, if necessary. I think I got mine a little too close to the edge. Okay, just like this. And then attach those two sides. And then same as before, we're going to go ahead and sew across here at 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, so just like before, we have that sewn across there at 3/8 inch. We're going to pull our tapes off from all four sides. Of course, this is if you use tape. You may be somebody that doesn't. I am very partial to using my double-sided sticky tape. I try to use it whenever possible because it just makes life so much easier to do that. Okay, I'll go ahead and trim my corners now. And again, we're just trimming just to reduce that bulk. Just make sure that you don't trim your stitches here. Which seems pretty obvious, but I thought I would mention it anyways. All right, and then go ahead and fold it down. Get a good crease going. And on the other side, and then go ahead and fold everything to the center. And now you should have something that looks like a big ring with your lobster claw attached. So I'm just going to pop a couple clips on here just to make sure it doesn't come up or go anywhere. Probably not necessary. I'm pretty sure I've got too many clips on here to begin with. But I say clip where you can. Alright, and then we're just going to turn this right side out. Just like that. Now, in the pattern, again, if you want to do that faux top stitching in the pattern, she gives you measurements to be able to do that. I'm not going to do the faux top stitching. I personally just don't see a difference in doing that. So, as I mentioned, I do it a little bit different where I don't cut that piece off here. So what I do is I just find my seam on the inside and just fold it over. So then I have something that looks like this. Just like that. And then clip it back down. Oops. Move your move your lobster claw up though. You definitely don't want to forget that. And then I just remove all of my clips because I'm going to do this pretty quick. So once you've got it all attached like that, just looks like a normal key fob if you were, somebody that makes key fobs. So a way that we can get rid of this thickness that's right here is if you do make key fobs, grab you one of these. It's a pair of key fob pliers, and I'm actually going to come down just a little bit further. Okay, so in order to get rid of this thick spot right here where our stitching is at, just take your key fob pliers, make sure you do have plastic covering the metal part, and just take and give it a really good squeeze on either side, and that'll flatten it out real good for you so that you don't end up with those skip stitches. And so now you can see the difference there, nice and flat. Go ahead and pop your clips back on. Okay, so now you're going to take and top stitch all the way around. Because we're not doing that top stitching to where you're going to see the stitches over the lobster claw, try and get as close as you can down all the way back up and around. And we're going to do the same thing with our bottom. Now, if you chose to top stitch this beforehand, then this would already be top stitched for you. Again, I'm not top stitching mine, so you're going to measure down from the top down based off the pattern, put your D-ring on, fold it over at the line that she gives you, clip that in place, And then same thing, we're going to top stitch from the top up. Now, if you don't want to do that top stitching beforehand and you want to wait to top stitch this until we attach it to the bag, you can do that as well. Okay, so now I have my top closure piece done, complete. And of course, when it comes to folding yours, if you want more of the flower and, you know, the black to be down here, you would just change that rotation. So go ahead and set this piece off to the side for now. All right, so we'll pull out our straps. Now, you should already have your straps folded to the center, just like this, with your double-sided sticky tape. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I'm doing my straps a little bit different. The way she does it in the pattern is perfectly okay. There's nothing wrong with doing it that way, especially if you're not going to be using any type of strap ends, right? So if you're not going to use those strap ends to go on the end of your straps, just like I did with the pink and blue bag, doing it that way is perfectly acceptable. There's nothing wrong. There's lots of different ways to do straps, but my ultimate favorite way to do straps is to have my vinyl on one side and then a layer of webbing on the other side, which is what we're going to do here. So you're just going to take your double-sided sticky tape one more time, and I'm using very cheap double-sided sticky tape, stuff that I know without a doubt is not going to get caught in my needle at all. No sense in using the good stuff if I don't have to. So we're going to lay it down just down the center on either side of our fold. So just like this. And then you're going to do the same thing on the other side. And then you're going to attach your webbing to that, top stitch it around all four sides. Now I've already done that ahead of time. So then you should have a strap that looks just like this. Stitch down, good to go. Okay. Okay, so now we should have two straps or two handles. They're straps because they go over your shoulder. You should have two of those. So go ahead and set that off to the side. You should also have your top strap closure. Go ahead and set that off to the side. We want to keep out our D-ring, or I'm sorry, our bottom strap closure. And then we want to pull out our front exterior piece. Okay, so we're going to add our D-ring to the front side of our exterior main panel. If you have any type of label that you would like to put on, I've been putting mine on in this corner here. It just seems to be a good spot to put it. You can go ahead and attach that as well. So we're going to line our our bottom strap closure up centered, and then we're going to top stitch around and back down. Okay, so your front panel should look just like this here, completed. If you have a bag tag with your bag tag on there and your D-ring attached. Go ahead and set this piece off to the side. We will be doing some riveting, but I'm going to do all the riveting kind of at one time for the exterior part of the purse. So go ahead and set this off to the side. Go ahead and pull out your pocket trim. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I'm not doing double vinyl on this because it tends to be very thick at the bottom part where we have to sew, because there's a little bit of the zipper or a little bit of the pocket that's there that we're going to be sewing this to. So instead I'm doing vinyl on top, and then I'm using my fabric that I'm for the interior part of the bag for the accent piece of this. So very simple, just like we do straps, we're going to measure down the center, add double-sided sticky tape to either side of both our exterior pieces and our interior pieces. Okay, so you should now have 4 pieces for your pocket trim, your 2 interior pieces and your 2 exterior pieces that are all folded to the center. Go ahead and set 2 of these off to the side. Grab your interior, or your grab your exterior and your interior, and we're just simply going to line up our edges. I would recommend lining up your top edges because that's what we're going to sew first, and that's going to be the most prominent one that you're going to see. You're going to see both the top and bottom, but you definitely want to get that top nice and lined up. So just like this, all the way down to the bottom. Now we're going to top stitch on the top. And I realize there is no top and bottom, but we're going to call this the top. We're going to top stitch at 1/8 of an inch, and then we're going to top stitch at 1/4 of an inch, and you'll do that for your second piece as well. Okay, so you should now have two pieces that look just like this. So you should have that top stitching across the top on both of those at 1/8 of an inch and then 1/4 of an inch. Go ahead and set these off to the side for now. Okay, next we'll want to pull out our exterior pockets. And on these, we are going to be making some marks on the top part of our pattern. It doesn't matter if you have, non-directional fabric. It doesn't matter which is top and which is bottom, but just mark one of them as being your top. And we're going to mark measurements from the top down based on the pattern. Now, we'll tell you that these are large markings here, or a large opening here, because this is not going to be a zipper pocket, but rather a slip pocket like I showed you in the beginning of the video. So you're going to make your boxes here on both your exterior pockets based off of the pattern measurements. Okay, so we should now have our exterior pockets, which are these really long pieces with our box on it. You can see where I've drawn mine out. This should be pretty wide. I mean, you can refer to the pattern for the width, but when you look at it, because this isn't a zipper pocket, this is going to be just like a slip pocket. So it's going to be pretty wide. You want to make sure to draw a center line and then your Y's at the end, or your V's, depending on how you want to look at that. Go ahead and set one of these off to the side for now and pull out one of your exterior pieces. It doesn't matter whether it's the front or the back. Just want one of those. We're going to take our exterior pocket piece. We're going to line it up center with our main panel, and then we're going to stitch this box. Now, I don't recommend stitching the side pieces. I have found that you get a much nicer box if you leave the side pieces unstitched, but starting directly in this corner, stitching all the way across and stopping directly in that corner, and then doing the bottom. The other thing that I have found that helps as well is when you stop here, don't cut your thread, just skip over and start your stitch here directly in the corner, go across directly in the corner, and then skip up and do just a little locking stitch here so you have a piece of thread going across. What that piece of thread does, in my opinion, that I have found, is that it kind of gives it something to fold over. But when I sew my sides down, I don't get nice crisp corners when I go to turn this, and I'll show you. Now, there's a couple of different ways that you can attach this pocket to your exterior piece. A lot of people don't like to put holes, unnecessary holes, in their vinyl, so you can also take a water-soluble pen or a heat erasable pen and also mark your box on the front side, and then place some double-sided sticky tape. For example, if this was your front here, some double-sided sticky tape to the inside of the box, which is actually what I'm going to end up doing. Okay, so your pocket should be sewn just like this, and you can see I did not sew here on my sides. I just went directly to the corner and then followed it across to the other corner, just leaving that piece of thread there. Leave that intact. That'll give it something to kind of fold over when you go to turn this right side, or well, when you go to turn the pocket. And then same thing on the back, leave that little piece there intact because that'll give it something to fold over. So now we want to cut right down our center, and then in our V's up to our corner, being sure not to snip our stitches here, and same thing on all four corners, and then we'll turn our pocket right side out. Go ahead and repeat the same process for your exterior pocket. Okay, so both of your pockets should now be sewn onto the exterior and should be turned right side out. And it should look like this right now. We're not going to close this pocket up just yet. We're going to leave it just the way it is, and we're going to top stitch all around the outside of the pocket hole. You can see that I have put pins in my vinyl. I stand by the fact that you can put pins and pin holes in your vinyl, and I'm going to show you how to remove those pin holes with just a little bit of heat. So we're going to go ahead and top stitch both of these, the front and the back of the exterior pieces, all the way around. Okay, so you should now have two pockets that are sewn with your hole and top stitched all the way around. Go ahead and trim your threads down, and then I like to take a little thread zapper. And just melt my threads down a little bit so that they're a little less evident, and it also secures them in place. This is, can't really say that name, but I got it off of Amazon, and I'll link it down below for you guys. It's rechargeable. It's really nice. You just heat it up, push a little button, it heats up and melts the thread down. What I like is this really small tip so that I can melt it down into the stitch hole so that it is less evident. And that also keeps me from burning the threads around it and from burning my vinyl as well. So I'll do that to both of them. And then I wanted to demonstrate how to get rid of pen holes if you need to use pins, straight pins when you're needing to hold your fabric back. So go ahead and remove your pins. Now, I don't recommend using pins if, say, it's going to be several hours before you need to do your top stitching or before you are actually going to be removing the pins. I will say that you want to try and remove your pins quickly. So if you're planning on taking a break before you do your top stitching, then you'll definitely want to wait to put those pins in before you do that. So it's going to be really hard to see this on camera, so I'm going to try and pick a nice light spot. But if you can see, I've got a little tiny pinhole right here. Not that, that's just like a little indentation, but it's like right there. So I'm going to just simply take a lighter, and I'm going to run this lighter over that hole. And actually that one there is a little pinhole. So kind of keep your eye on that little hole right there, right here where my little fingertip is. I'm just going to quickly run this lighter over it, and then take my finger and just kind of cool it off. And so now you can see that that pinhole is gone, and it did not mess with the texture of the vinyl at all. So I'm going to do that to all of them. Now on this one here, because it's black or darker colors, you really can't see unless it's like on one of the flowers. Like this one right there. If you can see that little tiny hole right there. I'm just going to take my lighter. I'm just going to run over it really quick. And now it's gone. So a super simple way to get rid of holes in your vinyl if you absolutely have to use pins. Now, don't get me wrong, we really could have just held our fabric out of the way while we were top stitching, but using pins was so much easier and just takes a lot less time. So now we're going to take one of our exterior pieces, so you should have two of them. Take one and just set it off to the side. It doesn't matter which one. I'm going to do the exterior first, and then we're also going to pull out our, I don't remember what this was called, but this is the front strap piece where it was two pieces, and we top stitched it 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch from the top. This is your top. So where you top stitched it here, this is going to be your top, and this is going to be your left side, bottom, and right side. Now in the pattern, she has you measure down a certain amount from this top stitching here down to place this in place. What I found in testing though is when you do that measurement, because we're going to end up top stitching this along here, that measurement then causes you to have to sew through all of these layers as well. So this is one measurement that I will give you because it's not a part of the pattern. Instead of measuring down from that top stitching, because everybody's top stitching is a little bit different. Some people do a 1/16 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch, maybe a scant 1/8 of an inch. So it can be really difficult to get a true measurement. So instead, I measured up from the bottom going up by 6 inches on the small. So 6 inches up from the bottom to place that. The main goal here is that your strip here, this strip here, is covering up your pocket hole there. That's the main goal here. This is just a decorative piece. It's not really holding anything. So the main goal is to just cover up that pocket so that it's kind of hidden at this point. So I measured up 6 inches from the bottom. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that our pocket is staying out of the way and to the top of the purse. And you can do this in 2 steps. You can sew down, across, and back up, or you can sew across first, trim your sides off on either side, and then trim down, or then, I'm sorry, then sew down your sides. I'm just going to do it all in one step. I'm just going to sew my side across the bottom and back up my top, making sure though that this pocket is staying completely out of the way. So I just take and sort of put it to the top and fold it up or roll it up or however I need to make sure that that stays out of the way. And then we're going to repeat that for the front and back of the bag. Okay, so we should now have 2 panels, our front and our back piece. You can see our pocket on the inside here. Obviously we have not closed up our pocket yet, but we will. But you can see how this is just to create a hidden pocket for us. It's really no more than that. So long as this strip here is covering up your pocket, it'll be perfectly fine, just so long as you measure both of them the same way. So now we need to close up our pocket. So go ahead and move one of your exterior pieces out of the way. And we're just simply going to fold our pocket up, clip this in place, along the top. And then I like to make and kind of fold this down and smooth it out. And then just add a couple clips here just to hold it. If anybody is curious, I do use mini binder clips. I used to use Wonder Clips, but I got binged in the head one time with a mini binder clip. They wear out because they're plastic, so they wear out over time. And so mine had just worn out, and I went to go clip something and it broke and binged me right in the forehead, and I said that was it, no more plastic clips. So once you have your pocket clipped, we're just simply going to sew all the way around the outside of the pocket. So you'll just take and pull your exterior back out of the way. When you get up here to the top, try and sew as close as you can to this. Let me kind of fold this down a little bit. So try and sew as close as you can to that line there. That way we can trim all this top off so it's not so much bulk up here at the top. So go ahead and do that to your front and exterior pocket, and when we come back we'll start on the sides and the bottom. Okay, so we should have 2 completed exterior pieces with our pocket sewn shut. So just like this. Now from here you'll want to go ahead and attach your stabilizer to the tops of these. Now, in my opinion, you should put your stabilizer down from the top and out of the way. I think that when you go to sew this, if the stabilizer is out of the way of your seam allowance, it's going to be far easier to top stitch than if that stabilizer is in the way. So definitely make sure that you measure down the seam allowance, which is 3/8. So you want to measure down a 1/2 inch and then place your stabilizer and a 1/2 inch from the top. And you'll do that to both exterior pieces. If you haven't done so, you'll want to do the same thing for your bottom piece. So you'll measure 1/2 inch all the way around, place this centered in the center. You don't necessarily need the stabilizer with the small because it's structured enough that you could probably do without. But I'm going to be adding purse feet to the bottom of my purse, so I want the extra stabilizer there to hold those purse feet in place. The same goes for the exterior pieces. Because I'm using vinyl, I could probably get away without adding that extra stabilizer here, but keep in mind that we're also going to be attaching straps with rivets here as well. So having that stabilizer here at the top is really going to help with the straps and holding that stabilizer, or holding the rivets in place and giving it a little bit more to hold on to. So if you're using vinyl, even though you're using vinyl, I still recommend adding that stabilizer there. When it comes to your side pieces, I do not recommend adding any stabilizer or fusible fleece to your side pieces because we want this to be nice and flexible on the side, so that it'll hold that shape of being flexible so that when you open the bag, it'll open up. So I don't recommend adding stabilizer to your side pieces. So go ahead and add your stabilizers and your purse feet. And then after you do your stabilizer and your purse feet, we're going to simply take our side accent pieces. We're going to line up our centers on our short end of our side piece and the short end of our bottom piece. You're going to have a little bit, if you can see here, you're going to have a little bit of an overhang. That's fine because we're taking a straight edge to a curved edge. So a little bit of overhang there is okay. So long as you're lining them up centered with each other, you'll be fine. So you'll line both of these up centered, and then you'll take your other side piece and line it up with the other side. Sew it at a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Open these up to where your seam allowance is facing your bottom piece, so they should be facing in, and then we'll top stitch. Okay, so we should now have our side piece sewn to our bottom piece. You can see where I put my purse feet on and just covered it up with some masking tape. Personally, I like masking tape better than using duct tape. A, it's cheaper, and B, the cheaper the masking tape, the better it's going to stick to our metal on our purse feet. I also like to use riveted purse feet rather than the pronged purse feet. The riveted purse feet, you just don't have to worry about covering them up. You don't have to worry about them, the prongs ever falling off. Of course, if you're using more expensive pronged feet, then you won't have to worry about the prongs ever coming off. But then you'd also don't have to worry about it rubbing through to your cotton either. So that's done, and you can see where I've top stitched and folded my seam allowance towards my base. Top stitched it, and then I also went ahead and clipped off my corners on both sides. So go ahead and pull out one of your exterior pieces, and it doesn't matter which one. It can be the front or the back. I'm going to start with my back piece, but again, it doesn't matter. You can do either or. We're going to start by clipping our base to the bottom part of our exterior piece. And I want you to just clip along your straight edge. So once you start to get where it's curving, I want you to stop. Okay, so right here where it's starting to curve, I want you to stop just before that. So I'm going to put a clip on either side, in the center, and on either side of that curve. And then I want you to come up here. Well, first, I'm sorry, let's do this really quick. I should have mentioned this before. Grab you a ruler and some type of marking pen that is either not going to be seen, or make sure that you keep this mark way out of the seam allowance. I want you to mark from this corner down the side 3/8 of an inch. And in from the side 3/8 of an inch. Do that on all four corners because we're going to need to have that overhang so that when we turn our purse, we've got a nice curve and we don't have too much of a lip at the top. Because again, we're taking a straight edge to a curved edge, so we're going to have that overhang. So you should now have little marks on all four corners. You can see my little marks here, right there. So when you go to line up your top, you're going to, this top one here, that top one right there, it's just going to just kiss the top of my panel. Okay, so just give it a little kiss there. And then, sorry, and then clip that in place at the top. Is this necessary? No, it's not. Does she tell you to do it in the pattern? No, she doesn't. But it will make all the difference in the world when you go to turn this right side out and you go to attach your lining to your exterior part, if you do that. Just makes it a little bit easier. And then I want you to clip down as far as you can until you start to have what we have, like a little bubble here going on. I want you to stop right there, and then do the same thing on the other side. And again, you're just that little mark up there at the top. Just let your panel just kind of just rest up against that 3/8 inch. That's 3/8 inch mark. And clip that in place. Okay, so you can see there where my mark is at and where my panel is. So we got a little overhang here. We want that little overhang there. And then again, we're going to clip the rest of the way down. Now, a lot of people will tell you, don't clip into your curve. It's not necessary. But some designers design their patterns to have to do just that. Now, if you're working with vinyl, you're going to have to clip into your curves because there's not enough stretch to be able to stretch it around that curve. So we're just going to make little snips about every inch, half inch, and then I like to do on either side of my base. Just enough so that we can get it to curve around our curve on either side. And then if you need to clip up, snip up a little bit more as you go to sew this, you can absolutely do that. So now we should be able to fit this around our curve. So what we're going to do is when you go to push this down, you're going to push it down and then pull up. So push down to match it, and then pull your side piece up flat. Okay. If you leave it laid down, if you leave it laid going down this way, it's going to match up, but then when you go to sew it and you pull it flat, it's not going to match up anymore. And so we want it to be flat so that when we go to sew it, it'll stay that way. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So we're going to pull it to match, and then we're going to pull it flat. Okay, pull it to match, and then pull up to pull it flat. And clip it in place. Same thing. When you go to sew this, you may need to use some tweezers to kind of pull that side piece to the panel. I like to first sew mine with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Don't backstitch at the top, so when you go to do that, don't backstitch up here with that 1/8 inch seam allowance, because we're going to end up unpicking a few of those to be able to open up our seam allowances. But I like to do 1/8 of an inch going all the way around, really focusing on making sure that my side panel is matching up with my exterior before I do my actual seam allowance. That does two things. A, it ensures accuracy of your seam allowance when you go to sew the panel together. B, it allows you to focus on primarily just lining everything up without having to also focus on your seam allowance at the same time. And C, when we go to turn this right side out, it's going to prevent stretching against the seam allowance, and sometimes you'll see the stitching in there. So it'll prevent that stretching of it. And I'll kind of show you that after we pull out some of the 1/8 inch seam allowance to open up our seams. I'll kind of show you what that looks like when you don't have that additional 1/8 inch seam allowance there. So go ahead and sew this together. Again, 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, focusing on matching everything up, and then we'll go in and sew it at 3/8 seam allowance. Okay, so I have sewn my exterior onto my side pieces and my base. You can see here where I did that 1/8 inch seam allowance with the 3/8 seam allowance, making sure to backstitch over my that little band piece that's here. I did go ahead and clip into my curve, so that way I can get a nice curve when I turn this right side out. You'll want to go ahead and repeat that process for your front piece or back piece, your other exterior piece. But here in your 3/8 inch seam allowance, I just want you to go down maybe an inch, inch and a half, and pull out those stitches in your 1/8 inch, because we're going to clip this so that we can open our seam allowance up. And then I want you to clip just above where your stabilizer is at. So right at that 1/2 inch mark. Just be sure not to clip your your 3/8 inch seam allowance, and then we'll end up opening up that seam there. So on either side. Okay, so you'll repeat that for the other exterior pocket. Go ahead and pull out your one of your lining pieces, your zipper overlay piece, and your zipper pocket. We're going to take our zipper overlay, and following the instructions in the pattern, we're going to mark on the back side of our zipper overlay a square, just kind of like we did with our exterior pocket, except it's going to be on this small overlay piece instead, so that we can have the same fabric for the inside and the outside, and have a zipper pocket that has no raw edges. This is not one of my favorite ways to make a zipper pocket. I prefer to do a zipper overlay that's made out of vinyl, so that I just have to stitch that on, cut the hole out, put my zipper pocket on, and pretty much be done. I think this is a lengthier way of adding a zipper pocket to the inside, but it's also a nice way of doing it if you really don't want to have that zipper overlay on the inside. Of course, if you have some type of decorative zipper overlay that you want to use, then that would be perfect. But if you don't, and you just want to do a regular old zipper pocket, this is definitely the way to do that. So go ahead and follow the instructions and the pattern for adding that box to your zipper overlay to the back side. I did reinforce mine with a very light fusible interfacing, just so that it'll give me a nice crisp fold when I go to turn it to the back side. So you'll take that, you will add it to your interior piece, and in the pattern she tells you how far down to go. Make sure this is centered and nice and straight, because it will be noticeable if it's off even a little bit. In my first one that I made, my zipper pocket was just slightly askewed down in comparison to the top of it, and it was pretty noticeable that it was crooked. So so make sure that this is nice and straight when you go to put that on. Just like we did with the exterior pocket, we're going to sew just the top part of the box and just the bottom part of the box. Don't sew on your sides. That just makes for a much more nice squared box instead of having this the sides sewn. So once you have that done, of course you'll turn that to the back side and give it a nice fold, or give it a nice iron. You're going to take your zipper pocket and your zipper by the yard, or if you have a piece of zipper that you can cut down, and a piece of zipper that you can cut down. We're going to attach this zipper to the long edge of our zipper pocket. Again, doing it this way is not one of my favorite ways of making a zipper pocket, because at the end, and you'll see this, we'll end up with quite a bit of additional fabric from the other piece of our zipper pocket. But we're going to do it the way that the pattern shows, just so that you guys can see a different way of creating a zipper pocket. So you'll attach your zipper to the long end of one zipper pocket, and then you'll attach the other end of your zipper, or the other side of your zipper, to the other side of the zipper pocket. Okay, so then you'll have two zipper pocket pieces attached to your zipper, right sides together. And I'll show you this when I get done doing it. I just wanted to kind of explain all of that, so that if you wanted to go ahead and pause the video and go ahead and do all that sewing. Of course, I'll show you the zipper pocket after I've turned that zipper overlay right side out, and then I'll show you what the zipper pocket looks like with the zipper shown on. That was a mouthful. Before we actually attach the zipper to the zipper pocket overlay for the internal panel. So let's get sewing. Let's go ahead and do that and get our pocket piece ready to go, and then I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so we should now have one of our interior pockets sewn with the zipper overlay on it and folded to the back and pressed nice and flat. And then I always add some pins going around just to make sure that that zipper overlay stays to the back. You should also have your zipper pockets attached to your zipper, and then I went ahead and added some double-sided sticky tape so that this will stay attached to our lining panel while we sew around it. Go ahead and add your zipper pull on here. I always add mine about center. If you have a zipper jig that you want to use, or however you would like to put your zipper pull on here. And then we're going to attach our lining piece directly on top of our zipper, just like so, making sure that that zipper is center aligned. And then we'll sew, keeping your zipper pocket out of the way. We'll sew all the way around the entirety of the zipper pocket, a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch, but about a scant 1/4 of an inch, because you want to make sure that when you're top stitching this, that you're not only catching the zipper underneath, but also catching your zipper pocket as well. So go ahead and do that. And then when we come back, we'll close up our zipper pocket, and I'll explain why we're going to close up the zipper pocket and not leave a hole, because we're actually going to end up leaving a hole in our lining instead, but I'll explain that. So go ahead and add your zipper pocket to your lining panel, stitch all the way around it with the zipper pocket open up flat, and then we'll go on to the next step. Okay, so our zipper pocket should now be attached to our lining panel. So just like this here. And then it should look like this on the back. You can see I actually got a little off on mine, which is why I said to be super careful and do about a scant 1/4 of an inch. So that way I could grab this down here. Not a huge deal. It's not going to fall apart or come apart. It just looks a little bit neater if it's actually on the lining instead. This is also one of the reasons why I really don't like making a zipper pocket like this, because you will end up with issues like that. And again, it's fine. It's not really going to be noticeable, but I would prefer that my my stitching be more on top of my zipper pocket, but that's fine. So now what we're going to do is we're going to flip this piece down, our top piece down, and we're just going to line everything up, give it a nice little press with your fingers, and then we're going to clip this in place or pin it. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to stick a couple of pins here. Make sure you're only pinning through your zipper pocket and not through the lining panel if you're going to pin it. And then we're going to flip it over, and we're going to sew on this side here. When you sew going down this way, I like to take my lining panel and line it up straight with my bottom, just to get a nice straight edge. That way I've got a guide here, because you want to try and sew as close to your side edge here, as close as you can, and we'll end up trimming all of this off. Now, if you noticed earlier, on this side, we have a decent amount of overhang here at the bottom. In the pattern, she's having you leave this zipper pocket open. I feel like this isn't big enough to turn the whole purse through, especially if you're doing vinyl. But what we're going to do instead is we're going to end up leaving our the bottom part of our purse open so that we have a much larger hole to turn our bag through. I don't recommend doing this as a drop-in lining because of all the curves that the top has. If you're not careful, it can come out really messy. So we're going to leave our bottom open, and I'll talk about that when we get to that part. But you'll just sew down the side, across the bottom, and back up, and try and get as close as you can to the edge. That'll leave for a much neater zipper pocket. Okay, so now our zipper pocket should be sewn to our lining panel. And then it should also be closed up, and then I went ahead and I trimmed off all of that excess and trimmed off the top. Now, you don't have to trim off that top piece. I do, just because it's extra fabric and sometimes it can get in the way. But your lining panel should look just like this. Go ahead and pull out your other lining panel. And because we're going to leave our hole in the bottom, we're going to do a little bit an extra step before we actually start sewing this. So in this pattern, she does account for the fact that we want our lining to sit on the inside nice and smooth. So with most patterns, we would need to increase our seam allowance by 1/8, even sometimes to 1/4 of an inch. With this pattern, you don't need to do that. We're just going to sew the straight 3/8 of an inch seam allowance all the way around. So because our seam allowance is going to be 3/8 of an inch, I'm going to double that, and I'm going to mark 2 inches from either side in. And so when we go to sew our bottom, we're only going to sew from the side to that mark, from the side to that mark. And then I also want you to make a box 3/4 of an inch up at those marks. So something just like this here. So we went in 2 inches on either side, and then made a box that is 3/4 of an inch tall. Okay, we're going to do that on both. So now what we're going to do is you're going to take some really cheap double-sided sticky tape. You don't need anything too expensive. And we're just going to lay a line of this right across. The reason I do it this way, when we go to turn this bag and we go to turn this to the opposite side by 1/4 or by 3/8 of an inch, if we add this additional step and add this tape, we're going to fold this over so that when we go to turn this, it is a perfect line across. This is especially important if you hand stitch your lining closed. Even if you sew it with a sewing machine, you'll then have a nice perfect line at the bottom. It's just one of those extra steps that you don't necessarily have to do, but it definitely makes it look a lot better if you do. So we'll do that on both sides. And you say, now Brandy, we're using cheap double-sided sticky tape. Is it really going to hold? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to sew our bottom first, and then we're actually going to add some top stitching along the bottom of our purse that'll then hold this in place for us, which is why I said the double-sided sticky tape really isn't necessary. You could just take and iron this back out of the way, would be perfectly fine as well. So go ahead and take both lining pieces, line those up centered and on the side. Go ahead and clip that in place. So now we're going to sew along the bottom here from the side to the mark that we made at 3/8 inch of a seam allowance, and then same thing on the other side from the mark to the side at 3/8 inch seam. Okay, so now that we have our bottom sewn, we're just going to take a pair of snips, and we're going to snip at just before the line that we made. We don't want to snip at that line, just a little before it. Be sure not to clip your seam allowance. We don't want to clip our threads and it come undone. Okay, so now go ahead and take off your double-sided sticky tape and fold these back to that line. So now it should look just like this on the bottom. So now what we're going to do is we're going to open up our exterior pieces. Your seams, go ahead and fold those open. Separate those out. Same thing on the other side. And now go ahead and top stitch to either side of the seam allowance by 1/8 of an inch. Okay, so now we should have something that looks like this. So now we have a nice wide opening so that when we go to turn our purse, we have a nice big opening. It's not going to rip. It's not going to come apart. It's going to stay nice and straight for us so that we don't have to worry about turning it to the opposite side. And then we're going to end up hand sewing to close this up. Don't let that scare you. I'll show you exactly how to do that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to finish sewing our interior pocket, or our interior part of our bag. So we're going to match up our bottom and our sides, and we're going to sew this at 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, the interior part of our bag should be sewn. Nice 3/8 inch seam allowance. Go ahead and snip just down below your top. Again, that's just so we can open up our seams when we go to attach this to the exterior. So now we need to box our corners. Now she has very specific sizes and how to measure this. So the best way to box a corner, of course there's lots of different ways out there, but is to take your finger and run your finger right along the seam and the seam at the bottom here. What I do is I put the bottom seam along the inside of my finger and the top seam along the top of my finger. And I can feel at that point if I am lined up nice and straight. Let's go ahead and, I forgot, we'll clip this seam open too. So go ahead and clip that seam open. But you can run your finger and feel. And then go ahead and get it triangled to where it's got a triangle there. And then if you peek on the inside, you can peek and see if you are straight and kind of shift it around as need be. Go ahead and give it a little press with your fingers, just to kind of press it out so that you have a nice triangle. Peek in there, make sure nothing's shifted on you again. And then give it a couple of clips. Now you want to clip this kind of far out of the way. Now most of the time we would measure from the corner up, but in this pattern she has you measure. Let me get this flattened out, I'm sorry, real quick. This is one of the reasons why I do not like to box corners. Because if you get it off, it is definitely going to be noticeable that it is off. And mine was about to be off. So let me straighten all this out and everything. There we go. Still just feels like it wants to fight me a little bit. Okay. There we go. Get it all flattened out, nice and flat. Put those pins or those clips as far away as you can, because instead of measuring from the tip of our corner up, we're actually going to measure from the tip of our corner out. So instead of going from here up, we're going to measure from here out. So I'm going to do that off camera. Okay. So once you have your marks, you can see I've got a mark here and I've got a mark here. Once you have your mark, you're then just going to take and draw directly across and connect those marks. Okay. So now you should have a mark that goes all the way across from one side to the other, connecting. We're going to make sure one more time that we are nice and straight in there, and then we're going to sew across this straight line that we just made. Once you're done sewing this one, go ahead and do the other side, and then your interior will be complete. So now that our lining is complete, so you can see I went ahead and sewed across, trimmed off my seam allowance there. Go ahead and set that lining to the side. Now we need to start making some marks on our exterior part of our bag for our straps. You'll want to make these marks before you drop your interior in and sew the exterior part of this. You definitely don't want to do these markings or punch the holes afterwards. The reason why is that one of your furthest holes down, if you punch it after you sew the bag, you'll end up punching through your zipper pocket, and you don't want to do that. So we need to mark these measurements and go ahead and punch them now. So you'll refer to the pattern for how far down to mark, and you'll be measuring against this side margin here. You can definitely do this you can definitely do this with the bag turned wrong side out. You'll do that on all 4 spots. Make sure that you're marking with something that you can see. Doesn't necessarily need to be something that is erasable, because you'll be punching that hole. But you'll make those marks, punch the holes, and then we'll be ready to sew our exterior part of our bag with our interior. You'll go ahead and do the same thing. Refer to the pattern for the measurements of your holes for your straps. Go ahead and mark those and cut those holes, and then this will be ready to attach to our bag. One thing that you'll want to do is, if you are using strap connectors, that you attach these strap connectors to your strap. Oh, that's already got the screw holes in it. Make sure that you attach your strap connectors to your strap before you measure your holes. So her measurement is included with this strap connector, or this strap end already on there. So make sure that this is attached before you do those measurements. And then you'll also go ahead and do the measurements for your top closure piece for your holes, and the holes for your for the back part of your bag. So decide which is your back part. Go ahead and punch those holes as well. There are a couple of different ways that you can attach this top closure to the bag. You can either do it over top of the strip here. You can do it underneath the strip. It really just depends on, do you want this pocket to be secure or not? If you don't want it to be secure, then you'll actually be attaching it more up this way. If you do want it to be secure, it'll get attached down this way. But we'll talk about that and discuss it when we get to that part. For now, go ahead and make your marks and measurements and get your holes punched, and then we'll start to attach things to the bag. Okay, so you should now have all of your holes cut into your exterior part of your bag. If it didn't punch all the way through, just make sure that you have nice clean holes so that it'll be easier for the rivets to punch through at the end. Go ahead and grab your lining piece, and we want to turn this wrong side in or right side out, however you want to look at that. And now we're going to take and put our lining inside of our exterior. It does not matter if you put the zipper on the front or the back of the exterior part of the bag. Personally, I like my zipper to be on the back side of my bag, so I'm going to make sure that my zipper pocket is up against the back side, but it really does not matter. So when we start this, we're going to line up our center, so the center of our lining with the center of our exterior first. Do that on both sides. Next, we're going to line up the center of our lining with the center side portion of our exterior. Make sure that you're opening up your seam allowance for your interior part. And line that up nice and centered. Give it a clip. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Open up your seam. Line it up with the center of the side panel for the exterior and give it a clip. And then I like to go through and start opening up my seams for my exterior and just placing a clip on that seam to hold it open. This is not a necessary step. It just keeps you from having to kind of fool with it a little bit while you're trying to get everything clipped in place. The next part, because we don't have a seam to match up with the exterior part of this seam here, we don't have one on the interior, we're going to line up this corner spot here. So we have a corner to our exterior and a corner to our interior. We're going to line that spot up. Just gives us a nice point to line up with our exterior. Do that on all four sides, or all 4 points, if you want to look at it that way. Okay, now we want to continue clipping the rest of the way around the bag. It does not matter how many times I make this bag. This will be my 3rd bag, and my lining is always just slightly short of being the proper size to fit in here and for me to clip everything in place. So you may find that you have to maybe stretch your exterior just a little bit, or stretch your interior just a little bit to match up. Do that, though. It's not going to hurt the bag. It's not going to change how it looks. My other two bags, I had to stretch my exterior just a little bit to get my lining to fit properly. Just do that. But whatever you do, don't move your quarter markings that you've already lined up. So if you need to stretch, you're going to stretch along where it's supposed to line up to. So what I do is if I have to stretch it, I'll actually put my finger here to hold it and my finger here and stretch it to make it fit the way that it's supposed to. I think that that's because the exterior and the interior are made different. They're not the same pieces. So if you're off just a little bit with your seam allowance, it's going to cause that to not fit just absolutely perfect like we're used to. This is an older pattern, and I'm sure that Chris W. Designs has now come up with new techniques for lining the purses. But if you do find, so like I can look right here and see that my lining is just slightly less than my interior. So I'm going to put my finger here where that point is at and right here in the center, and I'm just going to give it a little stretch. Okay, and then that'll allow my lining and my exterior to match just fine. So go ahead and do that. Clip all the way around. Go ahead and sew your bag at 3/8 inch seam allowance. Go ahead and turn your bag right side out after you've done that and top stitch around. But don't close up your lining just yet. Just do the top stitching, and then we'll get our straps and our top piece added to the bag. Okay, now that we have our bag sewn and we have it nice and top stitched, I wanted to give you guys kind of a different angle looking down into the bag when we go to attach our straps to it. I wanted you to see that so that you could kind of see what I'm doing inside of here. So we cut our holes for the exterior part of our bag. Obviously, we did not cut through the lining of that. And then you have this nice big opening down here inside the bag. For your rivets that are going to be here on your band, you really do want a longer rivet to go with that. So you can see the difference here between these two different rivets. So you want a longer rivet that will go through the band because it is quite thick in that spot. So I'm going to start by taking my rivets and going underneath my lining to the hole that I made. I'm going to do that for all 12 holes. So you should have 3 for each strap. Okay, so once all of my rivets are on, I'm just going to stuff my bag back down in there. I'm going to take my strap, which should have my holes already punched, and then I'm just going to hold where my rivets are for each side. So reaching in again into my lining and just popping my strap onto those rivets. Okay, and then go ahead and add your tops if you're using double cap. And this is just for now, just to hold this in place. Once we actually do it with our press, then it'll stay permanent. And then making sure that your strap isn't twisted. So making sure that it's going the right way and that it's not the wrong way. Of course, if you did a double-sided, then you'll know if it's wrong. But just make sure it's not twisted. Again, just holding my rivets on the back side while I pop my strap on. And how you know you have the right size rivet is if you have about an 1/8 of an inch sticking up. So if you can see this, there's like an 1/8 of an inch of my little nub sticking up. That's how you know you have the right size. Anything more than that or anything less than that, and the rivet will not seat properly. And then you're just going to have a mess because your straps are going to come undone. And you don't want that to happen. Okay, so we'll do the same thing for the other side. Go ahead and set all of your rivets for all the sides. The next thing that we need to do is decide whether or not we want this back pocket here to be secured. So we want our strap to go this way, or if you want it to go on the inside, or if you would rather it be at the top. The option is totally up to you. I think if we're going to have the front be secure, then we should have the back be secure as well. However, I don't like the way that it looks overlapped this way, so I'm going to set mine to where it's on the inside like this, because I want to be able to see this band and that nice pretty top stitching. So we'll go ahead and punch our holes for this and set our rivets for our top closure strap, and then we will be all done with our bag. Okay, so now that our bag is done and our straps have been attached and our top closure has been attached with our rivets, we need to go ahead and close up our bag. So remember, we left a pretty decent sized hole in the bottom, so we definitely want to get that closed up. So what you're going to need is a few clips, a needle, you can see that, a needle, and just some thread. I'm just using the same thread that I used for the bag. You can use invisible thread, you can use color thread of your fabric, whatever you would like. But we're going to do what's called a blind stitch. So a couple of clips, and so where we top stitch this, now we've got just a nice straight line. We don't have to worry about it, you know, coming undone or being crooked. And so we're just going to take and clip these in place. So once you have it clipped, go ahead and take your needle and thread. Make sure you've got a knot in the bottom of it. And we're going to go in between our lining here, right at the edge where we need to start sewing. So I'm just going to go up, and I'm going to go right in between my interfacing and my lining, my two lining pieces. So just like this. So you can see where that first stitch is at. I'm going to go take my needle right there. Go ahead and pull it all the way through. And then you can see that that knot is now in between my lining pieces. Go ahead and clip your lining back. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to sew with a motion of going from front to back, front to back, front to back. So we started with our needle in the back position. We're going to go over to the front, and we're going to go in between our two lining pieces. And then we're going to come up. So you can see I'm not going all the way down and coming back up. I'm just sliding my needle in between those pieces and coming up. And about an 1/8, 1/4 inch. You don't want it to be too big. You don't want it to be too small, because you'll be sitting here hand sewing the entire time. And we'll just pull through. Now, because we're in the front, we want to go to the back. So we're going to hold our thread down, and just like we did before, we're going to slide it in between our two lining, or in between our seam allowance is really what I'm doing. Going in between your seam allowance and then coming back up right along that edge. And then pulling it. Okay, so now I'm in the back, so now I want to go to the front. I'm going to go down and slide it in between my seam allowance and then back up. And like I said, about 1/4 inch wide. And then pull tight. Now you can see where I pulled tight, you now cannot see that seam at all. And when I open this up, this is going to sit nice and flat on the inside, so you're not going to be able to see those stitches. So we're going to finish that all the way across to the end, and then when we get to the end, I'll show you how to tie it off so that you don't have a big knot there at the end. Okay, so now that I've made it to my last bit of stitching, go ahead and trim this little piece out of the way here. We're going to go ahead and do our last bit of stitching all the way to the end. And then when you're ready to tie it off, we're going to just slightly, just a couple of green, you know, things of fiber strands, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Just a couple of fiber strands on your needle. and then loop it through. So we're going to go in our loop one more time and then tie that off. Get you a nice strong knot there. Okay, and then just trim it. And so now go ahead and push your lining down into your bag, and you can see the difference here in between sewing it with the sewing machine and sewing it by hand. It does take a little bit longer to do, but the results are absolutely beautiful. Wow, what an absolutely fantastic sew. I loved making this bag so much. She came out absolutely gorgeous. I hope yours did too. I love this one. I definitely like how I changed it up in the back and put my connector behind my pocket rather in the front. I think that looks much nicer. She looks fantastic. But you can really tell the difference in adding strap connectors or not having strap connectors. It doesn't change the effect of the bag. It still looks wonderful. Let's see that big inside too. I love how wide this bag opens. And not having that zipper pocket or that top zipper to restrict it is absolutely fantastic. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure to give it a big old thumbs up. If you have any comments or suggestions or patterns that you would like for me to make in the future, please comment below and let me know. Thank you so much, and thanks for joining. Bye!